Imagine being stranded on a remote island after a devastating storm, where two completely different worlds collide. He's a powerful CEO, lost in the chaos of his own life, and she's a passionate conservationist, fiercely dedicated to protecting the island's fragile beauty. What starts as a clash of personalities turns into a journey of survival, self-discovery, and an unexpected love that changes everything. In this heartwarming story, watch how the storm not only reshapes the island, but also transforms two hearts forever. If you're a fan of romance, resilience, and second chances, this is a story you won't want to miss. The seaplane's engine hummed steadily as it cut through the endless expanse of turquoise water. Alexander Alex Reed sat in the back, his gaze fixed on the horizon, though his mind was far from the serene view outside. The once celebrated CEO of a global luxury hotel chain, Alex had built an empire that catered to the world's elite. But now, he was a man running from the wreckage of his own life. The tabloids had been relentless. His high-profile divorce from a Hollywood actress had been splashed across every magazine cover, and the scandal involving his company's environmental violations had only added fuel to the fire. Once hailed as a visionary, Alex was now painted as a villain, a man who cared more about profits than people or the planet. The official reason for his trip to the remote eco-lodge was to inspect operations, but Alex knew the truth. He needed to disappear, even if just for a few days. The island, part of his company's portfolio, was supposed to be a hidden gem, a sanctuary for those seeking peace and luxury. Yet as the seaplane descended, Alex's sharp eyes caught signs of neglect. The dock was weathered, the once pristine pathways overgrown, and the main lodge looked like it hadn't seen a fresh coat of paint in years. As the plane landed with a gentle splash, Alex stepped out onto the creaking dock, the humid air immediately clinging to his skin. A young man in a wrinkled uniform approached, offering a half-hearted smile. "Welcome to Coral Haven, Mr. Reed," the man said, his voice tinged with nervousness. "I'm Ben, the assistant manager. The lodge manager, had to leave for the mainland this morning." Alex raised an eyebrow but said nothing. Typical. He had come here to escape chaos, not to find more of it. As Ben led him up the winding path to the main lodge, Alex took in the state of the property. The lush greenery was still beautiful, but the pathways were uneven, and the bungalows he passed showed signs of wear: chipped paint, sagging roofs. This was supposed to be one of his company's crown jewels, yet it looked more like a forgotten relic. At the lodge's entrance, Alex's attention was drawn to a woman kneeling by a flower bed, her hands covered in soil. She wore a simple uniform, her dark hair tied back in a loose braid. Despite the heat, there was a calm focus in her movements as she carefully replanted a cluster of native flowers. "Lily," Ben called out, and the woman looked up, brushing dirt from her hands. "This is Mr. Reed," Ben said, gesturing toward Alex. "He's here to check on things." Lily Carter straightened, her sharp green eyes meeting Alex's. There was no awe or deference in her gaze, just a quiet confidence that caught him off guard. "Welcome to Coral Haven," she said simply, her voice steady. "I'm Lily Carter, the marine biologist here. I also help with the grounds when I can." Alex nodded curtly, unsure how to respond. He wasn't used to people meeting him without a hint of intimidation or admiration. As Ben excused himself to handle some urgent matters, Alex found himself lingering near Lily. She returned to her work, her movements efficient yet gentle. "You're a marine biologist?" he asked, breaking the silence. "Yes," she replied without looking up. "I've been here for 3 years. I study the coral reefs and the sea turtles that nest on the island." Alex glanced toward the beach, where the waves lapped gently against the shore. "And how's that going?" Lily paused, her hands stilling. "It's a challenge," she admitted. "The reefs are struggling and the turtle population is declining. The lodge used to support conservation efforts, but, well, priorities have shifted." Her words carried a subtle edge, and Alex felt the unspoken accusation. He knew what she meant. His company had slashed budgets for smaller properties like this one, prioritizing profits over preservation. Before he could respond, Lily stood, brushing off her hands. "There's a storm coming," she said, her tone matter-of-fact. "You might want to settle in before it hits." Alex frowned, glancing at the clear blue sky. "A storm?" Lily nodded. "The forecasts say it'll be here by tomorrow. It's going to be a big one." He shrugged. "I've dealt with storms before." Lily's lips curved into a faint, almost pitying smile. "This isn't the kind of storm you can ignore, Mr. Reed." With that, she turned and walked away, leaving Alex standing alone. For the first time in a long while, he felt a flicker of something unfamiliar. Curiosity. As he made his way to his bungalow, Alex couldn't shake the image of Lily's steady gaze and the quiet strength in her voice. He had come to Coral Haven to escape, but it seemed the island and its people had other plans for him. The first signs of the storm came earlier than expected. By late afternoon, the once clear sky had turned a murky gray, and the wind carried a sharp, salty bite. Alex Reed stood on the balcony of his bungalow, watching as the waves grew restless, crashing harder against the shore. He had dismissed Lily Carter's warning earlier, but now, as the air grew heavier and the horizon darkened, he couldn't ignore the unease creeping into his chest. A knock at the door pulled him from his thoughts. Ben, the assistant manager, stood there, his face pale and his voice shaky. "Mr. Reed, the storm's moving faster than we thought. We're going to need everyone's help to secure the lodge and prepare for the worst." Alex frowned. "Isn't that your job?" Ben hesitated, clearly uncomfortable. "We're short-staffed, sir. Most of the team left for the mainland yesterday. It's just me, Lily, and a couple of others. We've got a few guests to look after, too." Alex sighed, running a hand through his hair. This wasn't what he had signed up for. He had come to the island to escape responsibility, not to take on more of it. But as he glanced out at the churning sea, he realized he didn't have much of a choice. "Fine," he said reluctantly. "What do you need me to do?" Down at the main lodge, the atmosphere was tense. The remaining staff and guests had gathered in the dining hall, where Lily was already taking charge. She stood at the center of the room, her voice calm but firm as she gave instructions. "We need to board up the windows, secure loose furniture, and move everyone to the safest part of the lodge," she said, her green eyes scanning the room. "The storm is expected to hit tonight, and it's going to be rough. If we work quickly, we can minimize the damage." Alex watched her with a mix of irritation and admiration. She wasn't the manager, yet she commanded the room with ease. The guests, a mix of a honeymooning couple, a small family, and an elderly man traveling alone, looked to her for reassurance. "Mr. Reed," Lily said, turning to him, "you can help Ben secure the bungalows. Start with the ones closest to the beach." Alex raised an eyebrow. "You're giving me orders now?" Lily didn't flinch. "If you'd rather sit here and do nothing, that's your choice. But if you want to help, we could use an extra pair of hands." For a moment, Alex considered walking away, but something about Lily's unwavering gaze stopped him. With a resigned sigh, he nodded. "Fine, let's get to it." The wind howled as Alex and Ben worked their way through the bungalows, hammering boards over windows and securing doors. The air was thick with humidity, and sweat dripped down Alex's back as he struggled with the unfamiliar tools. "This isn't exactly what I had in mind when I came here," Alex muttered, his voice barely audible over the wind. Ben chuckled nervously. "Welcome to island life, sir. It's not all cocktails and sunsets." As they finished the last bungalow, a loud crack split the air. Alex turned just in time to see a massive tree branch crash onto the roof of one of the guest cabins. "Damn it," Ben cursed. "That's the Thompsons' cabin. They're inside." Without thinking, Alex sprinted toward the cabin, his heart pounding. He could hear the panicked cries of the family inside as he reached the door, which was jammed shut by the fallen branch. "Help me get this open," Alex shouted to Ben, who was right behind him. Together they pushed against the door, the wood groaning under the weight of the branch. Inside, the Thompsons, a young couple and their 6-year-old daughter, huddled in the corner, their faces pale with fear. "Are you hurt?" Alex asked, his voice steady despite the chaos around them. "We're fine," the father said, clutching his daughter tightly. "But we can't get out." Alex glanced at the branch blocking the door. "We'll get you out. Just stay calm." It took every ounce of strength Alex and Ben had to pry the door open enough for the family to squeeze through. As they guided the Thompsons back to the main lodge, Alex felt a strange sense of purpose, a feeling he hadn't experienced in years. Back at the lodge, Lily was organizing supplies and setting up a makeshift shelter in the dining hall. When Alex and Ben returned with the Thompsons, she immediately sprang into action, checking the family for injuries and offering them water. "You did good," she said quietly to Alex as she passed him. He blinked, caught off guard by the unexpected praise. "Thanks," he muttered, unsure how to respond. The storm continued to intensify as night fell. The wind screamed through the trees, and rain lashed against the boarded-up windows. Inside the lodge, the atmosphere was tense but organized. Lily had managed to keep everyone calm, her steady presence a beacon of reassurance. Alex found himself watching her as she moved through the room, offering words of comfort to the guests and directing the staff with quiet authority. She was nothing like the people he was used to, those who fawned over his wealth and power. Lily was real, grounded, and unshakable. As the night wore on, the storm showed no signs of letting up. The generator sputtered and died, plunging the lodge into darkness. Gasps of fear rippled through the room, but Lily's voice cut through the panic. "Stay calm," she said, lighting a lantern. "We've prepared for this. We'll be fine." Alex stepped forward, surprising even himself. "I'll help check the generator," he offered. Lily nodded, handing him a flashlight. "Be careful." In the pitch-black night, Alex and Ben made their way to the generator shed, the wind nearly knocking them off their feet. The generator was old and rusted, and despite their best efforts, it refused to start. "We're not getting this thing running tonight," Ben said, his voice grim. Alex sighed, running a hand through his rain-soaked hair. "Then we'll have to make do without it." As they returned to the lodge, Alex couldn't help but feel a growing respect for Lily. She had warned him about the storm, and she had been right. But more than that, she had shown him what true leadership looked like. Not the kind that came from a title or a bank account, but the kind that came from strength, compassion, and determination. By the time they re-entered the lodge, Alex was exhausted, his muscles aching and his clothes drenched. But as he looked around the room at the guests huddled together, at Lily comforting the frightened little girl, at the staff working tirelessly to keep everyone safe, he felt something he hadn't felt in years, a sense of belonging. The storm outside raged on, but inside the lodge a fragile sense of hope began to take root. The storm raged on through the night, its relentless winds battering the lodge as if testing its limits. Inside, the dining hall had become a makeshift refuge. Guests huddled together on mattresses and blankets, their faces illuminated by the soft glow of lanterns. The air was thick with tension, but Lily Carter moved through the room like a calming force, her voice steady and reassuring. Alex Reed sat near the back of the room, his shoulders slumped from exhaustion. His hands were still raw from prying open the Thompsons' cabin door, and his clothes clung to him, damp and uncomfortable. Yet for the first time in years, he felt something other than the weight of his own failures. He felt useful. Lily approached him, holding 2 steaming mugs of tea. She handed one to him without a word and sat down beside him. For a moment they sat in silence, the sound of the storm filling the space between them. "You did good out there," she said finally, her voice low but sincere. Alex glanced at her, surprised. "I didn't really have a choice, did I?" Lily smiled faintly. "You could have stayed in your bungalow and let the rest of us handle it, but you didn't." He took a sip of the tea, the warmth spreading through him. I guess I'm not as useless as I thought. Lily tilted her head, studying him. Why would you think that? Alex hesitated, the words caught in his throat. He wasn't used to opening up, especially not to someone like Lily, someone who seemed so sure of herself, so grounded. But something about her made him want to try. I've spent my whole life building things, he said finally. Hotels, resorts, an empire. But somewhere along the way, I lost sight of why I started. It became about numbers, profits, expansion. And then, when everything fell apart, my marriage, my company's reputation, I realized I didn't even recognize the man I'd become. Lily listened quietly, her green eyes softening. It's easy to lose yourself when you're chasing something big, she said. But it's never too late to find your way back. Alex let her words sink in, the storm outside echoing the turmoil within him. As the hours dragged on, the storm showed no signs of letting up. The generator was still out and the lodge was growing colder. Lily and Alex worked together to distribute extra blankets and supplies, their movements synchronized as if they'd been doing this for years. At one point, Alex noticed Lily crouched near the corner of the room, comforting the Thompsons' young daughter, Emma. The little girl was clutching a stuffed turtle, her eyes wide with fear. Is the storm going to take our house away? Emma asked, her voice trembling. Lily knelt down to her level, her tone gentle but firm. No, sweetheart, the storm is strong, but we're stronger. And we're all here to keep each other safe. Alex watched the exchange from a distance, something stirring in his chest. He had spent so much of his life surrounded by people who only cared about what he could give them. Money, power, influence. But Lily was different. She gave without expecting anything in return. Later that night, as the guests finally began to drift off to sleep, Alex and Lily found themselves alone in the kitchen, rummaging through supplies. The lantern cast a warm glow over the small space, and for the first time, Alex noticed the faint freckles on Lily's cheeks, the way her braid had come loose, strands of hair framing her face. You're good with people, he said, breaking the silence. Lily glanced at him, surprised. I've had to be. When you work in conservation, you spend a lot of time convincing people to care about things they can't see. Like the turtles. She nodded, a small smile tugging at her lips. And the coral reefs, the mangroves, the fish. This island is a delicate ecosystem, and every piece of it matters. But it's hard to get people to see that when all they care about is profit. Alex winced at her words, knowing they were aimed, at least in part, at him. You're not wrong, he admitted. I've spent my career making decisions that prioritize the bottom line, and look where it's gotten me. Lily set down the can of soup she was holding and turned to face him. It's not too late to change, Alex. You have the resources, the influence. You could make a real difference if you wanted to. Her words hit him like a wave, and for a moment he couldn't speak. No one had ever spoken to him like this before, not as a CEO, but as a person. I don't even know where to start, he said finally, his voice barely above a whisper. Lily's gaze softened. Start here. Start now. As dawn approached, the storm began to weaken, the winds dying down to a low howl. The first rays of sunlight broke through the clouds, casting a golden glow over the battered lodge. Alex and Lily stood on the porch, watching as the island slowly came back to life. The air was still heavy with the scent of rain, and the ground was littered with fallen branches and debris. We made it, Alex said, his voice tinged with relief. Lily nodded, her arms crossed against the morning chill. The worst is over, but there's still a lot of work to do. Alex turned to her, his expression serious. I want to help. Not just with the cleanup, but with the island, the lodge, the turtles, the reefs, everything. I want to make it right. Lily looked at him, her eyes searching his face for any sign of insincerity. But all she saw was a man who was finally ready to take responsibility, to do something meaningful. Then let's get to work, she said, a small smile breaking through. As they began to organize the cleanup efforts, Alex found himself working alongside Lily more and more. They repaired broken furniture, cleared debris, and even helped relocate a nest of sea turtle eggs that had been washed too close to the shore. With each passing hour, Alex felt a sense of purpose he hadn't felt in years. And with each shared glance, each quiet moment, he felt something else. A connection to Lily that went beyond admiration. That night, as they sat on the beach watching the waves, Alex turned to her, his heart pounding. "Lily," he began, his voice unsteady. "I don't know what's going to happen when I leave this island, but I do know one thing. I don't want to go back to the man I was before, and I don't want to leave without knowing if there's a chance for us." Lily looked at him, her expression unreadable. For a moment, he thought she might turn him down. But then she reached out, her hand brushing against his. "There's always a chance," she said softly. As the waves lapped at the shore, Alex felt something he hadn't felt in a long time: hope. The morning after the storm, the island was eerily quiet. The once violent winds had stilled, leaving behind a landscape of destruction. Fallen trees littered the paths, debris was scattered across the beach, and the lodge's roof had suffered significant damage. Yet, amidst the chaos, there was a sense of relief. They had survived. Alex Reed stood on the lodge's porch, surveying the damage. His muscles ached from the previous night's efforts, but his mind was sharper than it had been in years. For the first time, he wasn't thinking about his company's stock prices or the headlines waiting for him back home. He was thinking about the people on this island, the fragile ecosystem, and the woman who had shown him what true leadership looked like. Lily Carter appeared beside him, her hair still damp from the morning's cleanup efforts. She carried a clipboard, her expression focused. "We've accounted for everyone," she said, glancing at him. "No injuries, thankfully, but the lodge is in bad shape. The generator's completely shot and the radio tower is still down. We need to get a distress signal out soon." Alex nodded, his jaw tightening. "What's the plan?" Lily hesitated, her eyes scanning the horizon. "There's a small research boat docked on the other side of the island. It's not in great condition, but it might be our best shot at reaching the mainland, or at least getting close enough to use the emergency radio on one of the nearby islands." Alex frowned. "That sounds risky." "It is," Lily admitted. "But we don't have many options. The guests are getting restless, and we can't wait for help to come to us." "I'll go with you," Alex said without hesitation. Lily blinked, surprised. "You don't have to—" "I want to," he interrupted, his voice firm. "I'm not going to sit here while you risk your life alone." For a moment, Lily studied him, as if trying to gauge his sincerity. Finally, she nodded. "All right, let's get moving." The journey to the other side of the island was grueling. The storm had left the trails nearly impassable, and Alex found himself wading through knee-deep mud and climbing over fallen trees. Lily led the way, her movements swift and sure, while Alex struggled to keep up. "You do this often?" he asked, panting as he hauled himself over a particularly large log. Lily glanced back at him, a faint smile tugging at her lips. "Not exactly, but when you work in conservation, you get used to rough terrain." Alex chuckled despite himself. "I think I'll stick to boardrooms." When they finally reached the dock, the research boat was in worse shape than Alex had expected. The small vessel was battered, its paint peeling and its engine looking like it hadn't been serviced in years. "This is it?" he asked, raising an eyebrow. Lily shrugged. "It's not much, but it'll get us where we need to go, hopefully." "Hopefully." She shot him a wry look. "You can stay here if you want." Alex shook his head, climbing aboard. "Not a chance." The sea was still rough from the storm, the waves tossing the small boat like a toy. Alex gripped the edge of the vessel, his knuckles white as he fought to keep his balance. "Are you sure you know how to drive this thing?" he shouted over the roar of the waves. Lily smirked, her hand steady on the wheel. "Relax, Reed, I've got this." Despite her confidence, the journey was harrowing. The engine sputtered several times, and at one point, a particularly large wave nearly capsized them. But Lily's skill and determination kept them on course. As they neared the neighboring island, Alex spotted the radio tower rising above the treetops. Relief flooded through him. "We're almost there," he said, his voice tinged with hope. But just as the words left his mouth, the engine let out a loud, ominous clunk and died. "Damn it!" Lily muttered, frantically trying to restart it. Alex grabbed a paddle from the side of the boat. "Looks like we're rowing the rest of the way." Together they worked to propel the boat toward the shore, their movements synchronized despite the choppy waters. By the time they reached the beach, they were both soaked and exhausted. The radio tower was located at the top of a steep hill, and the climb was brutal. Alex's legs burned with every step, but he pushed forward, driven by a determination he hadn't felt in years. When they finally reached the tower, Lily wasted no time setting up the emergency radio. She adjusted the dials with practiced precision, her brow furrowed in concentration. "Mayday, mayday," she said into the microphone. "This is Coral Haven Eco Lodge. We've been hit by a severe storm and need immediate assistance. Over." For a moment, there was only static. Then, a crackling voice came through. "Coral Haven, this is Coastal Rescue. We read you loud and clear. Help is on the way. Over." Lily let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding, a smile breaking across her face. "We did it," Alex said, his voice filled with relief. Lily turned to him, her eyes shining. "We did." As they made their way back down the hill, the adrenaline began to wear off, leaving Alex with a deep sense of exhaustion. But there was also something else, a quiet pride in what they had accomplished together. When they reached the boat, it was clear they wouldn't be able to use it to return to Coral Haven. The engine was beyond repair, and the waves were still too rough to row back. "We'll have to wait here for the rescue team," Lily said, her tone resigned. Alex nodded, sinking onto the sand. "Could be worse. At least we're not in the middle of the storm anymore." Lily sat beside him, the two of them staring out at the horizon. The sun was beginning to set, casting the sky in shades of orange and pink. "You know," Alex said after a long silence, "I've spent most of my life thinking about what's next. The next deal, the next project, the next big thing. But sitting here, right now, I don't think I've ever felt more present." Lily glanced at him, her expression soft. "Maybe that's what you needed all along, to stop running and just be." Alex turned to her, his heart pounding. "I think I needed you." Lily's breath caught, her eyes searching his. For a moment the world seemed to stand still. Then, slowly, she leaned in, her lips brushing against his. The kiss was soft, tentative at first, but it quickly deepened, the weight of everything they had been through pouring into that single moment. When they finally pulled apart, Alex rested his forehead against hers, a small smile playing on his lips. "Thank you," he whispered. "For what?" "For reminding me what it means to care about something real." Lily smiled, her fingers brushing against his. "You're not so bad yourself, Reed." As the waves lapped at the shore and the sun dipped below the horizon, Alex felt something he hadn't felt in years: peace. The rescue team arrived the following morning, their boat cutting through the calm waters as the sun rose over the horizon. Alex and Lily stood on the beach, watching as the team disembarked, their uniforms crisp and their movements efficient. Relief washed over them both, but it was tinged with a bittersweet feeling. The leader of the rescue team, a tall man with a no-nonsense demeanor, approached them. "We received your distress call. Are there any injuries or immediate medical needs?" "No injuries," Lily replied, "but the lodge took a lot of damage, and the guests are shaken. They'll need transport back to the mainland." The man nodded. "We'll take care of it. You two did a good job getting the message out. Could have been a lot worse." As the team began unloading supplies and preparing to head to Coral Haven, Alex turned to Lily. Looks like our job here is done. Lily smiled faintly, but there was a flicker of something in her eyes, something she wasn't saying. For now. Back at the lodge, the rescue team worked quickly to assess the damage and evacuate the guests. The Thompsons, the elderly man, and the honeymooning couple all expressed their gratitude to Alex and Lily before boarding the rescue boat. "You saved us," Emma Thompson said, clutching her stuffed turtle as she hugged Lily tightly. Lily knelt down, her voice soft. "You were very brave, Emma. Don't forget that." As the last of the guests departed, the lodge felt strangely empty. The storm had stripped away its usual charm, leaving behind a battered shell. But to Alex, it didn't feel like an ending. It felt like a beginning. Later that afternoon, Alex found Lily on the beach, her feet buried in the sand as she stared out at the ocean. The wind tugged at her hair, and the sunlight danced on the water, casting a golden glow around her. "You're not going with them," he said, more a statement than a question. Lily shook her head. "This is my home. I can't just leave it like this." Alex stepped closer, his hands in his pockets. "You don't have to do it alone." She turned to him, her expression guarded. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I want to help," Alex said, his voice steady. "Not just with the cleanup, but with everything. The lodge, the conservation efforts, the turtles, all of it. I want to make this place what it was meant to be. A sanctuary." Lily's eyes searched his, as if trying to determine whether he was serious. "You're a CEO, Alex. You have a company to run, a life to get back to." He shook his head. "That life doesn't mean anything to me anymore. Not the way this does." For a long moment, Lily said nothing. Then slowly, a smile broke across her face. "You really mean it, don't you?" "I do," Alex said, his voice soft. "But I can't do it without you." Lily's smile widened, and for the first time in days, Alex felt a weight lift from his chest. Over the next few weeks, Alex threw himself into the work of rebuilding Coral Haven. He used his connections to bring in contractors and conservation experts, ensuring that the lodge would not only be restored, but also transformed into a model of sustainable tourism. Lily worked alongside him, her passion and expertise guiding every decision. Together, they created programs to protect the island's fragile ecosystem, from restoring the coral reefs to expanding the sea turtle conservation efforts. As the lodge began to take shape, so did their relationship. What had started as a tentative connection grew into something deeper, built on trust, respect, and a shared vision for the future. One evening, as they sat on the beach watching the sunset, Alex turned to Lily, his heart pounding. "I have spent my whole life chasing things that didn't matter," he said. "But being here, with you, has shown me what really does." Lily looked at him, her green eyes shining. "And what's that?" "You," he said simply. Lily's breath caught, and for a moment she couldn't speak. Then, with a soft smile, she leaned in, her lips meeting his in a kiss that was both tender and full of promise. Months later, Coral Haven reopened, its transformation complete. The lodge was no longer just a luxury resort. It was a sanctuary for both people and wildlife, a place where guests could reconnect with nature and themselves. Alex stood on the porch of the main lodge, watching as the first group of new guests arrived. He felt a sense of pride he hadn't felt in years, but it was more than that. For the first time, he felt like he was exactly where he was meant to be. Lily appeared beside him, her hand slipping into his. "You did it," she said, her voice filled with pride. "We did it," Alex corrected, squeezing her hand. As the sun set over the island, casting the sky in shades of gold and pink, Alex knew that his life had changed forever. He had found not only a purpose, but also a partner, a woman who had shown him the power of resilience, compassion, and love. And for the first time in a long time, he felt truly at peace.